Today I'm going to walk you through how to install Linux in a virtualized environment. Now, the particular virtual machine that we're going to use is created by Oracle called VirtualBox. Now, simply go to virtualbox.org and click the big blue download button so we can get started. So here we're going to focus on the platform packages section. This screen correlates with the operating system that you're currently running on your machine, not the target operating system that you would like to use for the virtual machine. So we're going to click Windows Host for me. Now, of course, if you're using a Mac OS, you're going to click OS X host. And if you're using a Linux distribution, you're going to use that. All right, so now that this finished downloading, we're going to go ahead and install this. We're going to click yes here. For this example of VirtualBox, we're going to go ahead and just go through the default settings and keep them as is so we can go ahead and speed up this process. Shouldn't take too long. All right, good to go there. All right, now for this version of Linux, we're going to use CentOS 7. So we're going to go to centos.org/download. And for this particular architecture, most people are going to use the x86_64. That's for the standard 64-bit computer, which most of our processors are using. We're just going to click the first mirror that we see here. So in this directory, it's going to show us different types of ISO images. So these images are going to contain multiple features. But for this example, we're only going to need the DVD version. And we don't need the one with everything minimal or the net install. We're just going to do the DVD version. Try to save a little space because this one's only 4.4 gigs versus the size of the other ones. And we're going to download it. It might take a little minute, so I'll get right back to you once mine's finished downloading. All right, my ISO image is finished downloading. Now, what we're going to do next is just create a new virtual machine. We're going to simply click this blue new button here, and we're going to name it CentOS 7. Now, as you can see, VirtualBox is smart enough to recognize what I'm typing, and it automatically selects the type of operating system as well as the distribution. Now, we're going to keep this machine folder selected as default and click Next. And again, as before, we're going to keep everything very simple and keep the default settings for this example. I'll click Create a new virtual hard disk now. Next. Keep that selected. 8 gigs is good enough. And all right, we have it created. First thing we want to do is go to settings. Go to storage here and click this optical blue disk. What we're going to do now is we're going to select image again, and we're going to click choose a disk file. Now we're going to select the download of the CentOS 7 that we did earlier, and that's going to be our ISO image. Click open. All right, see it highlighted there. Click OK and start. I'll let it do its thing for a little bit. We're just going to select enter and let the installation process begin. All right, so now we're on the main screen. What we're going to do here is we're going to start by configuring the localization settings. We're just go ahead, select the standing keyboard, English, it's going to be for me, whatever language you are, you select that. Okay, continue. First thing we're going to do is select the date and time. Now I'm in Sacramento, California, so I'm going to select the West Coast. You select whatever region that you would like. The next thing we're going to do is select the software components and the base environment. So as far as the software selection goes, first thing we're going to select is the server with GUI. Now by default, the server with GUI selection will install most tools necessary for the configuration and maintenance of general server infrastructure, along with the GNOME as the default GUI. Now, just a little gee whiz, GNOME stands for GNU Network Object Model Environment. It's just always easier for me if I understand the acronym when it comes to understanding things a little better. It's nothing more than one of the basic graphical user interfaces used by a lot of Linux distributions. So we'll go ahead and select that. Now, as far as add-ons for the selected environment, we're going to scroll down here and we're going to select the KDE workspace. Click done. I'll wait for it to finish checking its dependencies. All right, looks like we're good to go there. Next thing we want to do is wipe the storage device to start fresh. So under the system section, we're going to select installation destination. Okay, here we see this is the virtual disk that we created earlier when we was creating the machine. So we're going to make sure we select this. And we're going to ensure that the automatically configuring partition is selected. We're also going to make sure the checkbox for I would like to make additional space available is checked. And then we're going to select done. So on this screen, to make sure we reclaim the disk space, it's good for general practice. We're going to ensure that we have free space, which it should be the rough amount that we used earlier because the disk is still empty. And we're just going to click reclaim space right here. Again, that's just for general good practice to make sure that the disk that we're using is clear. So now what we're going to do is configure the partitioning scheme to use. We're going to click the installation destination button again. Now this time we're going to click I will configure partitioning. Click done here. Now the first thing we want to do is make sure that there's no other mount points that's been using, and we're going to use the default LVM selection. Next thing we want to do is select click here to create them automatically. All right, so the main 3 volumes that we want to make sure that were created is the /boot, /, which is also root, and the swap partition. All right, we see those 3 there. Now, just a point of note, sometimes if you have a hard disk that's larger than 50 gigabytes, it will automatically create a /home for us. But since we have less than that, we're not going to create it. It's going to be part of the root system. We just want to take note of the space that each one of the systems are using, as well as the available space. And then we're just going to select done right here. We're going to select accept changes. We're good to go. Now, the next thing we want to do is move on to configuring the network. So on this installation summary page, we're going to go select network and hostname. All right. Now on this screen, what we're going to do is ensure that the interface that we want to use, which is in my case, ENPOS3 is selected. That's simply the virtual machine interface that we're going to use to connect to the internet that we selected earlier when we was creating the virtual machine when we first installed VirtualBox. All right, now here we see the host name. We can leave it as a default right now as our local host. And we're going to go to configure. The next thing we want to do is make sure we go to the IPv4 settings and we're going to select manual. So in this example, what we're going to do is add an IP address, a static IP address that we're going to use to connect to the internet. So for this example, we're going to use 10.50.1.1.201. I'm going to use that. And for the net mask, we're going to use 255.255.255.0. And the gateway is going to be 10.50.1.1. For the DNS servers, we're going to use the default of 8.8.8.8. For those of you who do not know, that's Google's DNS server. And we're going to save. Now, last but not least, we will make sure that we have this Ethernet connection on. So it shows it's connected. And we're going to click done. All right, we're done with that. So next thing we're going to do is click begin installation. Now on this screen, we're going to start to configure the usernames and user accounts. So under user settings, first thing we want to do is select the root password. Now, of course, we should always use the most complex and strong password as possible. But for the sake of this example, we'll keep it very simple. We have the password set there. So the next thing we're going to do is create a user account. And we're going to do this by selecting the user creation button. Now, for this example, I'm just going to use host1. That's the username. And of course, we want to make this administrator. And then, as stated earlier, in a production environment, you want to make sure you're using a complex password because you don't want the system be subject to any dictionary attacks where a hacker essentially collects a whole bunch of you commonly used passwords like password 123 or anything like that, or especially avoid your name. All right, we're good to go there. And that's how you create a user account. Now, at this point, we're waiting for the system to install. Now, this can take up to 30 minutes, so I'll be back as soon as everything's installed for you guys. It looks like that we have completed the installation. Now, the next thing we want to click is the reboot button here. Next thing we need to do is select and accept the license. I'm going to select it here, click done, and click finish configuration. We're going to log in with the password that we used earlier for our user that we created. Over this. All right, we're in. Keep our settings the same with English. Click English here, keep that same. Next. Keep the default settings. Skip this for now. And we're going to start using CentOS Linux. And now we're booted into our own CentOS Linux system. And we'll return to the system as we do our hands-on demonstrations together. Thank you for sticking with me throughout the entire installation process, and I will see you in the next hands-on lesson.